One, two, three, four.
Hello, you're listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. We are a general interest independent bookstore located in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles, California. This year, because of the coronavirus pandemic, we've had to close our store and cancel in-person events. But SKYLIT is your neighborhood bookstore, and we are finding ways to create community even while we're far apart. In the coming weeks, we'll be putting out lots of new audio content to help you discover new books, connect with authors, and check in with your favorite booksellers. To learn more about how you can help keep SKYLIT alive, please visit our website at skylitbooks.com or check out our social media accounts on Twitter and Instagram. You can subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Thank you for listening and enjoy.
Hello, my beautiful listeners, and welcome to SKYLIT. This is the SKYLIT Books podcast, and I'm your host, Lance Morgan. Today, we're welcoming Jaya Saxena to read from her new book, Crystal Clear. She'll be in conversation with Helena Fitzgerald, but before I introduce them, I want to remind you that SKYLIT Books is currently open for browsing with limited capacity, and we're still practicing social distancing. So please bring your masks and stay 6 feet apart, but come on by. We'll be happy to have you. We also are offering curbside pickup and online ordering at our website, www.skylitbooks.com. So you have many ways to get books today, especially this book, Crystal Clear. All right, well, Jaya Saxena is the co-author of Basic Witches and a staff writer at Eater. Her work has appeared in many outlets, including the New York Times, BuzzFeed, GQ, Elle, Electric Literature, Catapult, The Daily Dot, The Toast, and so much more. Check out her work online. She lives in New York City with her partner. Today, she's in conversation with essayist and friend Helena Fitzgerald, whose work can be found in Book Forum, Electric Literature, New Republic, The Cut, and so many other places. So look her up as well. Oh my God, Jaya, Helena, I'm so happy to have you. Listeners, you might not know, but we had like a great conversation before this, and this is just, I'm now their official hype person. So I'm sorry, SKYLIT, I'm done. I'm out.
Oh, thank you for having us.
Problem. Jaya, you have a reading for us today?
Yes, I am going to be reading a small little bit from the chapter in my book about rose quartz. So as a bit of explanation, Crystal Clear, it's an essay collection. Each essay is centered around the supposed properties of a different crystal, but I'm certainly taking a critical eye to them. But yeah, just sort of exploring the sort of ideas and metaphors that we put into rocks.
Listeners, you can't see this, but like she said rose quartz, and it was like my favorite stone. I was like, right?
So yeah, I'm going to be reading the rose quartz chapter, or a bit of it. And for people who don't know, rose quartz is supposed to be a stone that attracts love and softness and motherhood and all of these sort of ideas. All right. If you've ever been curious about crystals, you probably have a rose quartz. Unlike diamonds and pearls, which typically belong in the jewelry box and are worn purely for adornment, rose quartz is utilitarian. It's the starter crystal for any budding witch, ubiquitous in museum shops and magic stores. But even if you're not interested in witchcraft or metaphysics, it's an easy stone to dabble with and is on the same level as reading your horoscope or getting a casual tarot reading. Even people who find these self-divinatory practices illogical can own a rose quartz and think, what's the harm? While other stones may promise money or luck or protection from some unseen enemy, rose quartz promises to fulfill the most universal desire, love, which makes it immediately appealing. Love is deemed a necessity more than a luxury, which justifies a pursuit by any means, but it's also never guaranteed. There is no direct action that you can take to obtain or maintain love, nothing that will make love happen. And when there's no other option for bringing love into your life, rose quartz starts to make sense. If you can't control it, maybe some unseen, misunderstood energies can. I bought my rose quartz at House of Intuition in LA during a week-long vacation between ending one job and beginning another. I was drained and looking for a stone or two to keep at my new desk to serve as a reminder not to lose myself, to work hard but keep myself happy, to remember that the whole point of work was to enjoy the life it could provide outside of work. I don't remember what the little card in the shop said about rose quartz, but on their website at the time of this writing, it reads that it's the stone of universal love, strengthens and balances the heart, brings comfort in times of grief, encourages forgiveness, and invokes self-trust. I posted my crystals on Instagram after I bought them, saying the rose quartz was to protect my heart. I'm not sure if I would have bought it if the description used the language I found most other places. One website calls it, quote, feminine in tone and one of the stones of the Great Mother. Another says it imparts warm, loving, feminine energy. Yet another calls it one of the most versatile feminine stones, which you can use to honor your divine feminine. Even when sources don't explicitly call out the feminine, they say the stone promotes love, generosity, and compassion, and is supposed to aid in childbirth. It's not hard to figure out who this is meant for. While interpretations of crystals can vary from source to source, the rose quartz is always the stone of unconditional love. Its pink pale translucence is said to pull at the heart and fill you with light and softness, to remind you of your love for others and your love for yourself. It also carries a soft feminine energy as opposed to the masculine, aggressive energy of other stones. Some witchcraft traditions have subbed in the words passive and active for feminine and masculine, but in a society that places those concepts firmly in a gender binary, we know which is which. Whether or not you identify as a woman or in any way feminine, to associate the binary of love and hate with any other binary assumes that love is naturally accessible to only some and requires a leap for others. Even the most generous reading of the crystal's properties, which say we all have both masculine and feminine energies in us, still buys into the existence of a dichotomy. Rose quartz promises love, but it is only in the supposedly feminine way, passive, unconditional, existing vaguely in the ether, radiating an energy that inspires people to sing love songs about them. A woman offers herself up to love and reciprocates it. She is a vessel, ready and waiting to be filled, and to return that love to all who expect it from her. All of these descriptions point to the feminine, and it is always the feminine side of any duality that is expected to sacrifice, to give without condition, and to absorb without resistance.
Jaya, thank you so much. I am such a big fan of this book, as you know.
Thank you.
And having had the privilege of getting to read some versions of it along the way, that essay has always been one of my favorites. And it's just, I love hearing it every time. So I have some more specific questions, but I wanted to start with just sort of looking at it. Sorry, my cat is sitting on my notes now.
Hi, Sophie.
She says hi. With just asking about how did you develop the idea for this? And did the development of the idea come from the current popularity of crystals? Or had you already started developing this idea before there was sort of the current boom and like interest in crystals and mystical things?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's a little bit of both because when I was a kid, I was like really obsessed with crystals.
Right.
And I write about it a little bit in the book where like the Natural History Museum gift shop and the Natural History Museum like gem room was like my favorite place in the whole world. And I had sort of forgotten that this was a huge part of my childhood until this crystal metaphysical renaissance started happening. And when a lot of other people started getting into it, I was like, wait a second, I've always been into this. Like
I
this
liked
is always
this band before it was popular.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this has been my jam for a long time. And so I found, you know, some of my like old notebooks, old rock collections. And then, you know, wanted this around more because I had really had it a lot. But I think as a kid, so much of my interest in it was just like, I thought rocks were cool. I thought it was very cool that there were all these different, they ruled that there were all these different crystals and they're all different colors and textures. And some of them were like, you know, you have metals, you have everything. It just seemed really interesting. And I didn't give a shit about the metaphysics. And this time around, I was more interested in right, these properties of why does a rose quartz mean love? Why does a amethyst,
Right.
bring balance and sobriety, whatever. And I think it just started on my own personal research where I was like, I want to look up these myths that some people are alluding to and these like ancient histories and all of these things. And I was constantly coming up against dead ends. You try to look more into uh right, that all these descriptions that were like, since the dawn of time we've associated agate with like these things, and I'm like, what dawn of time, when, who is doing this association, who said this, cite your sources. And just getting really frustrated that there was no, it was really hard to find those sorts of answers. So it started as a very practical project for me to find like where these stories came from. And then in finding that, becoming really interested in the question of like, why did we do this? Because like, as I write in the book, I come from the position of like, all of these definitions are arbitrary. Like they're totally made up. I do not think there are like secret vibrations in these rocks that are, bringing you luck or money or the ability to speak more clearly or anything. We did this, we made all of this. So like, why did we do that? And I think in general that was what I was trying to explore.
Yeah, I love that about the book. And one of the things, as I was going through it and making notes for this conversation, that really struck me about it, and I think has always struck me about it since you were writing the essays for Catapult and since you were originally working on the book, is that it's a book about belief that doesn't engage with belief on either side of the binary in which people often think belief exists, right?
Yeah.
That like you either wholeheartedly believe in something or like you're totally skeptical of it and you're debunking it. And obviously there are like many more ways to approach belief than that, but often people's feelings and more specifically writing about it tend to take one or the other like polarized stance on it.
Yeah.
And I love that Crystal Clear doesn't do that. That it kind of holds space for like a lot of skepticism and like a lot of engagement with mythos and with like spiritual vibrational woo-woo ideas.
Yeah.
That, like, I don't think the book regards it as woo-woo, but that like might be regarded that way. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about the role of belief with the particular crystals that you talk about there.
Yeah, and because I really do think for a lot of people, and it took me a long time to learn this, that it is not that binary. Like I definitely grew up in a situation like, I was like mean teenage atheist for a long time.
Same.
I was there rolling up into chat rooms and being like, hey, did you know God isn't real? Like, woo, and leaving. And and I still like, I do not think of myself as adhering to like a specific spiritual belief, but I think the idea of spirituality started becoming interesting to me as I got older, of just like, okay, well, like everyone does this. So many people do this in these ways that exist outside of organized religion. And viewing it as something not that has been handed to us by an outer power, but something that we created, I think really and so I think that's a lot of it. And I think there are a lot of people who recognize that this is something we create, and that doesn't take away meaning from it. I mean, sure, there are plenty of people who have their crystals and do believe that they are, channeling higher powers, that they are getting in touch with energies that, exist outside of humanity and guide humanity. And that's wonderful. And like, I do not want to take that away from anybody. But also just in sort of even my anecdotal research, I think there are a lot of people who are like, I know this is just a rock. I know this is just a pink rock or a blue rock or a brown rock, but I think it's pretty, and I have put this association into it. And so then whenever I hold it, whenever I put it at my desk, whenever I meditate with it, whenever I do something with it, I am extracting the power that like I know I put in there.
Yeah.
And I think like more people are very aware of what they're doing than I think a lot of, you know, the mean atheists or the mean hyper religious people like want to give them credit for. And I think as a whole, like we know when we do this on some level. And we know maybe it's a little silly, and we know that it's arbitrary, and we know we're not actually being handed some new strength or new power, but like everyone needs a reminder sometimes. Like everyone has a talisman that they use sometimes. It just seems really common.
Yeah. And one thing I love about that is I think, you know, there are so many places in the book where you're using the crystals as less a means of belief than a means of permission.
Yeah.
And like some of the permission is to examine these really big topics.
Oh.
Like the rose quartz essay, for instance, or the amber essay, like one of them is about like love and one is about death, which are like, you know, and they're like
two pretty big things you could
right,
go through.
like one of the essays is about change. And something I love is that those topics become at once complex and approachable in the way you write about them here. And I think that they are topics that are often either dismissed because they're sort of too enormous to approach, or can be approached in kind of hackneyed ways because like, oh, really, like we're talking about love or death. Like,
yeah, it's
what could be left to say about that? And how do you think the using the crystals gave you a way into those sort of broader, even intimidating topics?
Yeah, because I think, right, I think that's actually one of the way, I love the way you put it of like giving permission in that way. Because I do think that for most people, if you're just like, all right, today I'm going to sit down and think about love and its influence on my life, or I'm going to think about death, or I'm going to think about the concept of change and how I have no idea what may happen to me for the rest of my life. And you're going to flip out. Like you're going to have a panic attack. Like this is too much for anybody to handle in one way. And I think like literally one of the practical elements of a crystal and putting that power into something is that like it's small, you can hold it, like it is something that represents these enormous ideas, and yet here you have this little thing on your desk, like on your side table or something that you can hold and feel, you know, for a second like you have a bit of control over that, or that you at least can enter this conversation without being totally overwhelmed by it. And so I think that's a lot of it, and I think that when these ideas become so overwhelming, it's like a first step in and giving yourself permission to just like access some thoughts, to think about things critically, to like take a moment and clear your mind and focus on something when, right, the scale of the thing feels like it's impossible to focus on.
Right, yeah. And I love that there are a lot of essays in here that, because they're looking at such big topics, you know, in the same way as the approach to belief, they don't necessarily come down on like one definitive side or another. Like the goal is to interrogate the idea. Like one of my favorite pieces in here is the Black Tourmaline essay, which is so good, and which, you know, interrogates and critiques the ideas of self-care in our culture, which of course is another, at this point, kind of form of mythos almost. And the idea of like toxicity and boundaries, and is able to, you know, really question some of the like set ideas that I think it's easy to just go along with those. And it seems like by using the crystal, you get to something that that is much more interrogative and that is able to kind of stay with, you know, I feel unresolved things about this. And that's where the essay ends up. Did you struggle with that at all? Were there any crystals that you came in to writing about with like particular assumptions, or that were like more difficult than others to either because of the theme itself?
That's a good question. I think the themes that I had a hard time with were just like, since a lot of these essays like do turn personal at certain points, it would be like the shit that I have a hard time with and that I need to talk to my therapist about.
Right.
So it's like black tourmaline, like the idea of setting boundaries, and when and where do we do that, and how do we decide to do that, and how do we balance our own needs versus the needs of people that we care about. Like, this is a big topic for me and my therapist. And I think writing that essay, it was very difficult. And I remember feeling like I didn't want to come down on one side or the other. And now in retrospect, realizing how much of that is like me still having a hard time understanding what that means for myself. But I hope that is somewhat relatable or understandable, because I think everyone to an extent goes through questions like that, where you're like, with your best friend, you're like, I love this person, I would die for them. They are wilding right now, and I am having a hard time in something else. And like, we are at this impasse, and it's like, do I keep giving all of myself to them because on all I want to, and I love them and I want to support them? Or do I say no? And then what'll happen if I say no? And, yes, that'll be good for me. Will that be good for us? Will that be good for them? Like, these are all of these things that happen with any of those decisions. And it's like so hard to figure that out, I think. And, and Opal, the one that was about change, was another that was really hard, because this had to do with, a new understanding of my own sexual orientation and like my partner's transition. And then all the other things that happen in life that maybe you did not plan for when you were 9. And now it's great, but it's new and there's something intimidating about it. And like, you don't know, like you have not planned this path.
Yeah.
And I think there was a lot of it that was intimidating, really made me sit with like, what does this theme mean for me? Like, what is, like, what actually do I want to say about this? Or am I just reacting to this idea because I'm freaking out right now?
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I just like, who knows if I'm supposed to do or not? Who cares, right?
No, you're great.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
We're just talking about like the impasse and like two people you love. I just like, because personally I'm going through something like that right now, but just hearing you like put words to what I'm feeling like that is just like, you're changing my life. You're changing my life.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
My life.
This is exactly what Jaya does.
I like want to be the person on the Zoom and be like, let's talk. Let's have it.
Oh my God.
I'm like,
and it's like, no, it's so hard, because I think like, especially with that, and I know that Black Tourmaline has been an essay that a lot of people have connected to. And I think for those reasons, because like, we sort of went as like a mainstream culture being like, boundaries, what are those? Nobody's ever said that word before 2011. And then, all of a sudden you get this big mainstreaming of these ideas of self-care and boundaries, and like, what was that meme text going around of like, are you in a place to hear like bad news, or, all of these things. And, obviously like the impetus behind it, this idea, the broad idea of like, hey, you should take care of yourself, is a very good one. And I think that we got all of this language and we got all of these ideas and very few deeper guides on like how to actually do that. And I think a lot of people like did a 180 there and was just like, that's it. I'm setting every single boundary. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not responding to a single text message. And that's because I love myself. And it's like, that's not it either. Like that's not how you should, or like, you know, this very transactional nature of like treating your friend as like a therapist, or assuming that anytime your friend needs you, it's like, well, that is my labor. And it's like, that's not labor. This is your friend.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'm like, are friends hobbies? I don't necessarily think so, but it's not labor. And so this very, you know, everyone sort of went this other direction. And it's like, whoa, wait, that's not what we need either. Please, can we come back and find some sort of middle ground here? And I think everyone is like really trying to figure out what that middle ground is. And it's different for everyone. And it's very hard.
I'm telling
But
you, I'm quitting this job. I'm joining whatever commune, whatever like Wiccan support group you want to make.
Look, this is the next step, right?
Same,
I got to start a crystal cult. Like, are we
100%.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry to like get in this, but like you guys are just.
No, this is.
Oh my god, no, stay.
I'll stay. Listen, don't invite me. Don't like. I'm here now. Oh my.
And that actually relates to the next thing I wanted to ask, which was just about like personal narrative writing and first person writing, which is something we both do and something you and I have talked about a lot. And I really admire the way you approach that here. Because, you know, you mentioned the Opal essay, which I love and which is so personal, and yet the personal is part of it and is not even like the majority of the text in it, even though it, and really all of the essays, but I'm thinking of that and the Pearls essay where you talk about sex and ideas of innocence and sort of myths around virginity. And, you know, all of that, those topics are very vulnerable and very personal in the same way that everything you talk about with sexuality and with change in the Opal chapter is, you know, very personal. And there are lots of other examples in the other essays. And that you manage to approach these things that are really quite vulnerable, but in a way where, like, you know, it's still, now I have the word boundaries in my head. It still feels boundaried in a positive way. Like it's still, it feels very intentional how you thread those into the essays. And you were mentioning that thing of like, that I think is a lot in being someone who writes first person narrative stuff about like, what is for my therapist and what is for my writing? Like maybe there's some Venn diagram overlap, but like there are also some categories that don't overlap. And like, how do you navigate that in a work that is, you know, partly personal, but it's not, but certainly incorporates a lot of other approaches?
You know, I think some of it is, like realizing early on that had to be something to navigate, because I realized that I can totally like blather on about myself all day and assume that everyone will find it endlessly fascinating. And so learning at some point, like, not everyone knows who you are or gives a shit. And so you're going to have to, I think essentially, you know, it maybe is as easy as step one, keeping the reader in mind, of just being like, this is not you talking to your friends necessarily who want to know about you. This is talking to somebody who does not know your life, or only knows what you're going to tell them. So what would actually interest somebody who is not already like emotionally invested in you? So I think that's certainly part of it. You know, in terms of talking about myself, or telling personal stories, there are limits to when they involve other people. And so, you know, certainly there are parts of this book where I'm telling a story that involves me and another person, where like I approached the other person and was saying, hey, I'm going to be writing about this. Is this okay? Whatever. But I still was not interested in like airing anybody else's dirty laundry or being like, hey, now this story about the two of us is in, or the three of us is in this book. So I think trying to sit with the personal stories I wanted to tell and being like, what does this, Helena, you and I have talked a lot about scenes in terms of personal essay writing, and sort of being like, what does this scene, what do I want this scene to accomplish? Who does it serve? Is this just to be able to tell people that I had this experience? And if so, that probably serves nobody but me. And so trying to think of like, what is the actual story or lesson that comes out of this scene? And how can I tell that in a way that essentially limits as much as possible the details that I give about myself or the details that I give about another person? Because ultimately it sort of doesn't matter in a lot of these things where I was, who I was with, what exactly we said, anything. What matters is like what came out of this interaction.
Yeah, totally.
And so I think trying to think of anything personal along those lines, and like what that bit serves. But then, yeah, a healthy amount of just like, before you write anything with the pronoun I, please think about whether you are just trying to sound cool to other people. Like, this is
so important.
This is just like big red alert over all of that.
Should be like I should put like a sign that says that above my computer.
Merch. That is merch.
It's,
like
100%.
It really is. It's like, I feel like you have all of those. It goes around like all those tweets that goes around. It's like, should this book be an essay? Should this essay be a tweet? And should this tweet be something to the group chat? Where it's really like, should I just be texting someone, bragging to my friends, being like, hey, remember that time that this happened to me? Like,
can I tell you a cool story?
Can I just tell you a cool story to get it out of my system so I can go back to doing my job? Like, that's so I feel like that definitely happened sometimes while writing this book.
Such good life advice.
Oh my God, absolutely. I was just gonna say, there's that, like, I don't know if either of you have ever seen this. I feel like it goes around like literary internet, or used to a few years ago more than it does now. But there was that like famous like packing list that I think like Joan Didion had, that like people were obsessed with for a while, and like 4 of the 10 items are cigarettes, and like, you know, it's like very cool girl. And I feel I once like met somebody who had that printed out and like pasted to the back of their front door, and I feel like I need to do that with that tweet instead. Just like paste it up around parts of my house with little check boxes. Like, is it an essay? Is it a tweet? Is it a text to the group chat? It's probably a text to the group chat.
Text to the group chat, right? Is this something you tell your therapist? Is this something you just like? No, there's so many different instances of this, and so many people who get into hot water when they mistake one for the other.
Like in the same line as like the Bechdel test, like this is like the Saxena test. Like you have to like, this should be in every like writer's like group, every like writer program. Like I'm telling you, this is
100%. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Such good advice. Do I have time for one more question?
I'm not even like paying attention to the time, because I'm just like, I have time for as many more questions as you want. I'm honestly
wonderful. I could do this forever. Are there any, I was sort of going to ask if in general, has your relationship to crystals changed as you've written the book? Like, are there any particular gemstones, crystals that like you didn't really have a relationship to before this, where your relationship to them changed or got stronger, or just the nature of it changed? Are you sick of crystals entirely and like, oh my God, I never want to see one again? Like, how is your relationship either to them in general or to particular crystals?
It's funny, definitely after I turned in the book, I definitely went through a period where I'm just like, and now I've said everything I wanted to say about crystals, goodbye. And then the book actually was published and people started asking me again. I'm like, why are you asking? I wrote it. I like it. It's good. and feeling just a little like crystalled out. I think that what happened, I think when I mean, I obviously have like my huge collection of crystals, and sometimes I'll be on a phone call or something and I'll like pick up one and I'll walk around and I'll have it in my hand and it's really nice. And I like just aesthetically love having them around. Like this is how I am choosing to decorate my apartment. I think the ones that I have more of a connection with now are like crystals and gems that have more of a like that I've inherited from family members and things that I have more of like that sort of personal relationship to. Like my grandmother gave me an amethyst pendant, and recently she gave me a turquoise pendant. That was a piece of turquoise that my grandfather had bought in Iran in the 70s, and was telling me the story about getting it, and I was like, wow, I really love this. My aunt gave me an opal ring recently, and the opal had come from my great grandmother's hat pin. And then she had like put the opal into a ring with some other stones. I have a couple pieces of jewelry that are like heirlooms that, and I write about in the book, one of the ones that I have is that my engagement ring was actually my great grandmother's engagement diamond that then she had passed on to my aunt, and then my aunt gave to me. And then when my partner and I were getting married, I gave them the diamond and was like, make a ring out of this. And so it's like this family stone. And so I think like that is where I've like noticed my attention and energies being, which makes a ton of sense, right? Like if we've decided that these are all slightly arbitrary meanings, this amethyst doesn't necessarily mean something because it has like, right, specific metaphysical vibrations. This amethyst means something because it was given to me by my grandmother, and like this is what she said when she gave it to me, and this is what I think about now. I think about her, and I think about her life, and I think about the things that I've learned from her when I wear it.
Yeah.
And that seems to me really powerful, and I think I get into it a little bit in the book, but I think at this point I've like bought so many crystals in my life, I do not need to like buy any more. But if I'm gifted something, or one crystal that I really love was one that I like found on the beach and just thought was particularly beautiful. And now every time I hold it, I think about like how I was feeling that day and what was going on in my life that day. And, that to me feels very powerful. And, I could have picked up a shell. I could have picked up an entire dead horseshoe crab. Like I could have, whatever, and maybe had the same associations. So it's really, just looking for those emotional connections into an object, which is what a lot of this is about. And, we make emotional connections with objects all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's romantic because I'm like I'm like in the
right there with you.
Oh my God. But what I keep thinking about in terms of like emotional connections with objects? Like, do you remember that old IKEA commercial?
Oh my God, I talk about this commercial. Wait, is it the one with the lamp?
The one with the lamp. And I literally think Michel Gondry directed it. Like, cut that if I'm wrong. Yeah,
that's totally accurate.
And it's literally like this sad lamp that's been put on the sidewalk because it's broken or it's old, and its head is looking back into the window of the apartment it came from, where a new lamp is in the window and is on.
It's raining.
And it's raining and it's warm inside there, and then there's this voiceover being like, you're so stupid, it's just a lamp, it doesn't have any emotions. like
there's and it's specifically like this because like IKEA, right? This like big like Swedish man voice comes in and it's like, why do you feel so sad about the lamp? It has no feelings and the new one is better.
Yeah, exactly.
I may or may not have this commercial memorized because I talk about it in terms of like exactly this, like how we love things like all the time.
And this is exactly what is going on with crystals. It's like we love the lamp even though we know that it has no feelings and other things may be better. It does not matter.
I feel like crystals are so great when they're gifted to you too for that reason. Like,
Yeah.
I have like a piece of amethyst that a friend's mom who like I stayed with for a bit gave to me. And like every time I look at it, I just like I'm like, and I haven't talked to this friend in a second, but I just like it makes me feel connected to this friend in a way that like
Yeah.
oh my god, you guys.
Because I was thinking of that. Like, I think that's what the whole book is really about, right? Is that how we like put meaning onto things that don't necessarily carry inherent meaning themselves, but that meaning becomes genuinely powerful, becomes like a material, real thing because we do it every time we interact with that object. And so it like genuinely, and that's also what heirlooms are, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't really have crystals, but I have a number of like objects that my mom has given me that are from like generations back in her family. And she has this like very fraught relationship with her family. So like they were already imbued with those meanings for her. And then she's told those stories to me. And I think that like so many, this is going to sound real cheesy, but like I've gotten to this
No,
sentence.
I'm ready.
Just
I'm
gonna
ready.
go ahead with it. But like many things that are not crystals also function as crystals in the way that you present crystals in the book, which I think is like such a wonderful way to let people into them.
Yeah. No,
like,
absolutely. We come up with our own associations or have these associations passed down to us like all the time.
Yeah,
Like
totally.
I have clothing that I've inherited from my mom that I'll never not associate with like some story she told about like the first time she wore that dress. And
right. Yeah.
these are and it's just like it's just like a physical thing that we get to put these ideas and memories and these very ethereal things onto. And I think that helps so many people, treat these ideas as real. Like if you have a solid physical thing, it suddenly is turning, and like we were talking about before, these ideas as big as love and death and purity and, about like, who has the ability to even comprehend something that big, or just the idea of a memory and makes it literally tangible.
Right.
So
and I think that's sort of what you express about both your relationship to crystals and their popularity now and at other times, that we need a place to put these feelings about memory, change, sexuality, family, love, death, like glamour. And this is like literally, as you're saying, like a small object into which we can kind of like shove all of those feelings, and then they're tangible and then they're approachable.
Do you think that's like the spirituality behind crystals too? I mean, like you probably already know the answer to this, and I'm just like, wait, it's like I'm like seeing the Matrix now. I'm like, I get it.
Yes.
Like, words are just coming at me. But is that like the spirituality, the putting the meaning in the history and like your own emotions into this objects and passing it on?
I think in a way, yeah, because I mean, far be it for me to speak about, religion or spirituality in any sort of like, I am in no way an expert. This is not something that I've practiced, but from what I've gathered, it functions a lot of the same way in like more organized spaces where like I at least remember from my grandmother, if she was singing a certain hymn, or, my other grandmother who's Hindu, like she had a shrine room in her house. And she always told me that one of the statues that was in there, of Krishna it wasn't that she believed in Krishna and was talking to Krishna, is that statue had been passed down in her family for generations. And so this was a place for her to like have that remembrance. Or my grandmother who was singing the hymns, like there's certain ones were her favorites because they reminded her of like certain other family members or times in her life where she had heard them, or, just it takes this big idea into being like, here are 8 bars you can sing, and to sort of feel that idea in a limited amount of time and space and take care of that. So I think that there are a lot of other spiritual practices that rely on that that same sort of interaction between, yeah, taking an idea, taking a feeling, and making it tangible, or making it something that you can handle in a short amount of time, or a small amount of physical space.
It's
Yeah.
like, as like a person raised in like a Black Baptist family, I
Mhm.
I'm not Baptist myself. I'm very like agnostic, whatever, something. But in like those songs, like everyone knows that Black Baptist hymns are like so like important to the community, and like I make friends who are like also Black and raised in Baptist who are like are atheist or agnostic, but those hymns mean so much to us that we'll like start singing it together, and like
Exactly.
memories, yeah. And also I love that you say you have no like authority to speak out spirituality or whatever when you're like my new high priestess now, like
This is also how I feel about you. Yeah.
yeah, you get it. You're like, she's like, what do you mean? You're my spiritual guide now.
And like, I should mention here, and perhaps this is outside the range of the podcast, but it feels relevant to mention that Jaya also once gave me a tarot reading that like took my life apart. Like I have it saved in like a very small album of photos in my phone so that like I can go back to it easily. Like we like were reading, our like writer group had like dissolved into you reading tarot for me and Jess. And
It's
then
always
like
great
right,
when that
it was
happens.
perfect and wonderful. And then like I had to like go do something else that evening, and hours later I was trying to tell my husband about it, and I just like broke down in tears because it was like so incisive and accurate. So I also love, and I actually do, to bring it back to the book, think that the book sort of holds that dichotomy of not thinking of yourself or experiencing yourself as someone who is like spiritual necessarily, but having this incredible fluency in a lot of somewhat mystical languages or approaches.
Yeah, and I think it's something too about being a writer where, right, I do not think I have any particular spiritual connection to anything, but I hope that as a writer and over the years that I have developed my career, that I hope that I am a somewhat insightful person. Like, if not, then clearly I'm not doing my job well, because that is the point of a lot of what I do, is to like provide different insight or a different point of view on something. And I think there is not the space between those two ideas is like not so wide. Or I think that what a lot of people are searching for, no matter what they call it, is insight into their lives and what they should do, or just insight into their own feelings. Because I think like, God, it's taken me long enough to realize like how many of my own feelings and thought processes are just such a mystery to me. And becoming aware of like your own self. And I think that, right, crystals can, they're a tool like anything else that you can use to try to create those connections. And like tarot too. I remember that reading, and what was so fun is that it's like, I don't think I could have done that to just anybody, but like, I know you and you're my friend. And so when I see these things, I know what I can talk about with you, because I know like what you're going through. And so like everyone needs, right, just slightly like a way to stand outside of themselves for a second. And then get back in. And I think like crystals are one of, right, like many tools that anybody can use to like do that.
Oh my God, spiritually I'm awakened. Oh my God, Helena, question for you though, and which is so like, I'm sorry, Jaya,
I'm so excited for this.
This is great.
When you were reading it, did like your tarot card reading that happened before come back to you throughout it? Like, did it like open it up even more.
You mean reading the book?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no question. Because I think that like, also conversations I've had with Jaya came back, but I think that in particular, because it was what I loved about that reading and what kind of took me apart with it was that you were saying like, here's where things are unsolved.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it wasn't a reading that was like, here's what's going to happen. It was like, here are the possibilities that exist. And you kind of taking your knowledge of tarot and your knowledge of me, because we're friends, and like reading that there. And I think it came back a lot through the book, in part because you do that a lot in the book where you present things as like doorways rather than answers. Like, we've grappled with this topic a lot, and like now we're standing in this doorway with it. And like, you kind of put your reader there. And that was a lot how I felt with that tarot reading, that it was like, oh, wow, I don't know the answer, but like, I sure do know what the question is more clearly. And like, that's terrifying.
I feel like half of that too, I mean, like, not to like, please like continue to call me like an insightful genius who is leading everybody to these beautiful doorways. I feel like so much of that was just me not wanting to tell anybody how to live their lives because I didn't want to get yelled at if I got it wrong.
Well, that is also so much of writing. Yeah.
Where it's just like, oh, if I had an answer here, I'm not going to give that to you, because if it doesn't work for me, then it's my fault. And
right.
Like, I'm not doing that.
It's like you're a therapist without the like credentials. But people are like, I'm looking for your advice. You're like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I was about to say that. It does feel like also that terrifying moment where, at least I, in my experience, say something to my therapist and she's just like, just nods at it. And it's like, oh, you mean I'm supposed to do the work now?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And it's like, oh, did you just trick me into saying this? You bitch.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
exactly that.
No, I have that with my the therapist throughout my life, where I've been like, I'm like talking about the problem I have, and then I'm like, but I probably should do A, B, or C, and my therapist is like, I'm like, why am I saying you? I'm doing that.
You're like, excuse me, I don't hear a letter.
Yeah, I don't hear a letter. They're like, you choose. This is the multiple choice question.
I know. And I feel like so much of it can be infuriating, because sometimes I'm just like, can you just give me some practical advice right now and tell me what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, even though I know that's not the point here. But but yeah, it's yeah. And I think like, right, you know, there's so many ways that everyone tries to go about having these, like, I feel like I've talked a lot about, Helena, with you and other things, of crystals and therapy and anything being a tool to just literally trick yourself into doing something that you know you have to do, but you didn't want to actually say it out loud. And it's just, and I feel the same way about tarot and stuff. It's just like tricking you into admitting something that you already know, but didn't want to confront because maybe it makes your life more complicated. Maybe you have to have a hard conversation. Maybe you have to stop doing something that you have actually enjoyed doing.
Yeah.
You know, that doesn't just let you continue to live your life, you know, with whatever is thrown at you, and you have to make active decisions, and that sucks. But I think that there are a lot of times where, you know, maybe we're in a position where we really know what we have to do and we know what the problem is, and it's just so hard to say it. And that this is one of many ways you can just literally trick yourself into saying it, and maybe pretending it came from another place. Sure, if that helps. But yeah.
Because I love at the end of the intro, you talk about, and let me see if I can find this line. But it's about crystals and power. I'm not going to find the exact line, and I'm going to take myself out of the conversation trying to. But you talk about, like, one of the things you want to do is that even though, you know, it may not be that these stones literally have like magical properties themselves, that you can still form a relationship to the power they have, and therefore they still are powerful. And I felt like the distinction you were making there was the difference between the power that, like, you know, sort of in I'm trying not to sound pejorative, but like sort of in a fantasy world, in like the sort of fantasy version of religion, like something outside yourself has power and it acts on you and you don't have to do anything and your life has changed. And that's some of like the like holy, like mystical approach to crystals, to tarot, to God, and to get into big concepts. But I love that, like, over and over when you talk about the power of these stones, you're defining power as the fact that, like, they can lead you to make choices that you probably knew you had to make, but would rather not make.
Yeah.
And like that empowerment, if it exists, is not something that happens to you. It's often just like knowing you have to do a difficult thing and then doing it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think there is, you know, obviously a great draw to that fantasy world where it's like, okay, cool, I'm going to have to do something difficult, but someone's just going to like tell me when that has to happen, right? And so I'm just going to chill out here and then you like say something and then I'll go do it. Rather than like you having to make the decision to like get up and do it, or to like, you know, I even think of like, you know, more like monotheistic texts where this idea of like God giving you a sign, like how easy it would be for me to be like sitting on my couch and being like, wow, that bush is on fire outside. That's super weird. Okay, I'm just gonna chill here and keep watching Bar Rescue. Like this is, you know, like how much
hope somebody deals with that.
Yeah, it's like, oh damn, I'm sure someone's called the fire department already. So like this isn't really my problem. And like how even you know, something in a story like that requires you to be like, oh shit, I gotta deal with this. Like and choosing to go deal with it. And so I think, yeah, that is a lot of this conversation about spirituality and intuition and choice. Like, you know, it all winds up swirling together. And everyone can pick whatever side of it feels like, you know, helps them the most. But I think we're all dealing with sort of the same stuff and the same, I don't know, motivations and desires. Like,
it's so funny you use the burning bush imagery, because like literally the other day I saw someone, like a politician probably, like commenting about how we need to like something about God in the little Nas X video that just came out.
Oh yeah.
And they were just like, so sinful. God would you need to look first of God. And I was just like, this God? And I posted a picture of a burning bush. And this is the person you're talking about.
Exactly.
Oh my God. If I'm walking somewhere and I see a burning bush, I'm gonna put it out, or just like be like, what is happening? I'm gonna keep walking. I don't know. It's oh my God. Well, I have bad news because we have to wrap up, and I just want to like keep this going on forever. But is there any last things either of you want to say about the book, or would you want to just say to the independent bookstore community, or just like you want to give me advice and be my new, like, I can be your apprentice and like just follow you around. But that's for me. That's for me.
Oh, well, I mean, like, please pick up the book and please pick it up from SKYLIT if you have the opportunity. To the independent bookstore community. Yeah, we were joking about this before with the independent bookstore community of just like, I'm sorry, this year has really sucked. Everybody has been trying to do the best they can, and thank you for trying. And I just really hope things are at a point where they're turning around.
This is basically, I have the same thing to say, like, thank you, because this year has been extremely hard for everyone or most everyone in all kinds of different ways. And like the independent bookstore community, certainly that's hugely true. And so, yeah, I'm so sorry and thank you. And to everyone listening, this book is amazing. It's like both a a joyous read and like a wonderfully challenging and inspiring one, and pick it up from SKYLIT if you can, from your local independent bookstore. Yeah.
Also, I just want to make a little like a footnote. Helena's cat was sitting on her, like, and she was just petting the entire time. I was just like, this is, yes, yes, power.
Like 100% like 1960s Bond villain, like energy.
Like, yeah, like in a way that's like, that was my hero in the Bond movies, where I was like,
same, yeah.
That's why I identified with. I was like, why is Bond against this hero? This
Right. She does that for, speaking of therapy, for almost every call I'm on, including therapy. Yeah.
So it's just like talking about deep emotions and then cat butt right in the camera.
Always. Keeping us honest.
Beautiful.
An icon. So, well, this has been the SKYLIT Books podcast. You can buy both of your books. Both of you have books that are.
I do not.
Oh no, Helena, but your essays are on like
all over the internet.
Find your essays. But Jaya, buy Jaya's book. It's so good. It's so great.
So
I'm
good.
Like, this is gonna be like my gift to like all my friends now. So like,
it's a great gift book. Highly recommend.
I'm so excited. Can we plug your like social media? Because I want to follow both of you, because I feel like you both just have great energies. But yeah, where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Jaya Sax, JAYASAX. Helena, plug your Substack.
I'm on Twitter at Hel Fitzgerald, HEL Fitzgerald, all one word. I'm on Instagram at Hella Fitzgerald, which tells you I'm from California. And I have a Substack newsletter that is essays about love, essentially weird essays about love.
It's
and,
so good.
Thank you.
That was selfishly me being like, how can I follow them?
But yeah,
that was for me. No, this has been a fantastic podcast. Again, I keep saying this. Thank you for also allowing me to be in this conversation.
Oh my God, this is so lovely. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh my God, you made my day. I cried, I laughed, I loved. That's all you need. So
yes.
Again, listeners, buy their book. Buy Jaya's book. Follow Helena on Substack, and feel that love I felt today. Thank you again. You guys, everyone have a great rest of your day. To all my beautiful listeners, you know I love you all. So thank you. And go out and buy a crystal. Go out and buy a crystal for yourself.
Yeah.
Buy a crystal.
Literally treat yourself.
Thank you for listening to the SKYLIT Books podcast series. Please don't forget to visit our website at skylitbooks.com and make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast for more author talks and bookseller conversations. You can find us on Podbean, iTunes, and Spotify. Stay safe and healthy, and we hope to see you back in our store soon.
I see